everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the XP Billionaires podcast. Or if you're binging us, welcome to the next episode. Hey, it's been all of 5 minutes. Nice to see you. This is Rayfe, and I am joined by my hosts, Sky Knight, Irene Rogue, and the Melzerker. And let's get some introductions out of the way. Sky, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm all right. I'm all right.
All right is good, but great would be better.
Someday.
All right, Irene, how are you doing today?
I'm not too bad. A bit tired, but I could be better.
Well, we all could at this point. It's a Sunday. Everything's all gonna restart on us tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's
No.
there's some dread to that, you know.
Oh my God, you have no idea.
And Mel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Hey, we got a great, awesome. Oh, this
Look
is
at that.
good.
I'm
All right.
digging for those XP points. You know what I mean? Like I gotta get them. Gotta get them. I'm behind you guys. Like I started later. You have all the XPs, so I gotta do what I can do.
You know what? Just keep in mind, the XP we've accumulated and for the title is not based on how long we've been doing the podcast. We're the XP Billionaires because we've been playing RPGs the majority of our lives.
Also, XP is a completely worthless currency that they won't exchange for goods or services, so you're not missing out on much.
They have value, and therefore I need them.
It'll still be better than Bitcoin, that's for sure. All right.
More stable, at least. Jesus.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So let's get to it today. So it's pretty obvious that video games themselves have evolved significantly over the last 3 decades in a variety of ways, both visually and mechanically. This week, I want to talk some about the mechanical evolutions and their part in RPG gaming. Specifically, the mechanics that have been included in newer games that, while we don't actually need them, we're kind of happy to have them included. Some people might claim these particular mechanics make a game easier. They do add a sense of relief to your gameplay, or just that added oomph that makes it a more enjoyable experience. Example of that would be a save anywhere feature that has rarely existed in the good old days. So I think that's one of my favorites personally, but let's see what other mechanics we can come up with.
Good old autosave.
Oh, yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick 2 different mechanics. One that would be more prominent to turn-based RPGs, and one that's a little bit more prominent in action RPGs, and then we'll kind of discuss from there. On that note, we got a twofer this time around. Mel, you are going first again. You should feel honored.
So honored. You've no idea.
All right. So, with regards to turn-based RPGs, what was a feature that we feel isn't necessary but is great to have?
Yeah, so there's so many that come to mind, right? And I really struggle with the difference between kind of like what's a mechanic versus like a usability feature, and but in the end, I think what I settled on is just something so ubiquitous is just when the game knows what item you're going to use and suggests whether or not that's helpful to you. So that could be like someone's unconscious and it defaults to letting you know that this is where your, Phoenix down would best go. Or it could be when you go to use a healing item and it won't actually have an effect on that person. Maybe use the wrong one, or, some games where you have like I heal multiple conditions, but it doesn't heal all conditions. And it's just so frustrating when you lose a turn, right? Because it's not like it makes the game more interesting. It's just a mistake. So when it lets me catch myself before I do those things, I find that makes the gameplay just more interesting in general and punishes me less when I accidentally screw up or when I'm learning.
Right? Also, I'm appreciative of every time that I select an antidote and it just auto-targets the character that's poisoned.
Yeah.
So I don't have to scroll. I know which one's poisoned.
And a lot of times in these battles, if someone is poisoned, for example, it's going to keep happening, right? The boss does that a lot. And just going through every single time and saying, where does it go? And it just slows down what can already be a very slow system. So I think when the game helps me out just a little bit, just give me a bone. Let me get to the part I want to play.
I will say that actually Final Fantasy 15, because I've been playing it recently, goes a step further and grays out anybody the item won't be effective on. So you actually can't select other targets.
Yeah, so that's like an awesome like usability feature of like a mechanic, right? Like just saying like we aren't gonna let you waste your turn.
We're not gonna let you waste this antidote on someone who doesn't fucking need it. Everyone else is grayed out except for the one kid who's got poison.
This is interesting. Like, this is not something I even registered as a mechanic or a feature in that. But the more I hear about it, the more you guys are absolutely right. The more I think about it, I can play an older title. I can throw something like an antidote out at somebody and it does nothing to them because they're not poisoned. But then, later games come along where I use the antidote. I try to use it on somebody and it's like, oh, you can't use it. And you're not wasting your thing. You're not wasting your turn. You're not wasting time. You just have to change the character that you need to use it on if you just selected the wrong one. That's very useful.
Yeah, and I'll say one of the most annoying things is when you need to do like a big heal on a single target and accidentally miss target to someone who's got full health.
Oh,
We've all done that.
Me.
Yeah.
We've all done it. We've all been killed by it. And you know what? If someone's at full health, just make them untargetable for healing.
Yeah, and it's like 45 minutes into the boss fight, and you start
course.
again, and it's an unskippable scene. There's another one.
Unskippable cutscenes,
Right?
yes.
But you start again, and you're like, come on, I've already done this. I've already been there. I figured out the nuance of this fight. Why are you dragging it out just to fill your hours?
And also, like a series of unskippable cutscenes right before the boss fight that you can lose. Fuck that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah, no, that's an excellent choice. I like that because it's something that some of us may not even think about some of our choices until we hear them out loud. And that's what I love about this podcast is you keep thinking. It makes you think.
XP Billionaires makes you think on a weekend.
Oh no, that's not good advertising.
It makes you analyze what you're actually doing, and that's interesting in and of itself because I think what we may see further down the line is that we're actually better at games for it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's actually something I'm going to reference a little more with the action RPG section. So we'll get into that a little bit more later. But moving on, we'll get to my next one. This one is interesting for me. Like, I only see it in a few specific game series, but the fact that these are in here is very, very interesting, and I kind of like it. So what I'm going to reference are encounter meters and encounter alerts. So, back in my day, we would just, walk around, get some alert screen, and that could sometimes scare the bejesus out of us, and then just go right into a turn-based battle. Then you have games like, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, and some of the past Gus titles like Arts and Alico, and I think this was in Atelier Iris, either 1 and or 2. I can't remember. Sky, I'll need you to back me up on this.
Yeah, 2 for sure.
Yeah. So basically, what would happen is you'd have a little meter somewhere on your screen, and with something like with Nocturne, it was based on the phases of the moon. But basically, as you walked around, the meter would start green or blue, slowly transitioning to yellow, slowly transitioning to red, which would indicate how much longer you had before you got into a fight. So it kind of gave you an idea of how long you had in between sessions while you're walking around. Now, the other thing, and this is more on the Gus titles, is after a fight, you'd have a little meter, like a thermometer, that would go down a little bit. And once it was all the way down, there were no longer any encounters on that screen. You could walk around freely, hunt for treasure, hunt for secret rooms, do whatever you needed to do. All you had to do, however, was just walk out of the room and back in, and then the meter would typically refill in most situations. Like, both of these were completely unnecessary in a turn-based RPG because all the predecessor games before that would just be like la 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 la, walking around, bam, fight. And But I kind of liked it. I kind of liked knowing that I was getting close to a fight. That way, when it was starting to turn red, I could, for example, go back into my menu, make sure my guys were healed up before the fight started.
Oh God. And just speaking of like the BAM fight, so I was recently playing like Dragon Quest 11, the Switch version, right?
Mm-hmm.
The complete version, and they had a whole section where you could like go back in time and like play old Dragon Ages, like Dragon Quests. The encounter rate on some of those classic 2D RPGs is infuriating.
Yep.
Encounter rates, let's put it down as like nice usability feature. Encounter rates that aren't fucking bullshit.
Looking at you, Fantasy Star.
Yeah, like I mean, so one thing I really like about the Persona games is that you have a really clear indicator of when you're going to be doing the mechanical grinding side of combat and when you're going to be doing kind of the more character driven stuff, right? So you can sort of be in the mood for those things. And when you get like a bar that lets you know like a fight's coming, you sort of get to look forward to it rather than being like, I was trying to get across the room and now I'm stopped.
Yeah, and that's what I felt that those did. And they did give you a lot of space. Now, none of these were guarantees. Like you could still get an encounter potentially on like a blue part of the map, but the odds of it were significantly lesser. So it wasn't something that would happen very often. Like for Nocturne, you could do it a little more often when you were in a full moon state, but that was really the only thing. And that was something specific and unique to that game. But yeah, so encounter meters, encounter alerts. I don't know why you were made. You didn't need to be made, but thank you for being made. I appreciate it. I do. Sky, what's your turn-based RPG mechanic?
Well, I am also going to talk a little bit about PS2 era Gus titles, but I'm doing something a little different. I like it when you have the feature when you're going through an area, you can swing to instant kill very low level enemies on the map. So I've been replaying Atelier Iris 3, and one of the things you can do is you can have the protagonist edge, you can swing at the enemies. Now, the enemies, as they appear on the area map, are basically blobs with 3 colors. Red is more of the slightly harder fights, the ones meant to get you leveling. White, kind of the average fight, and then blue. Blue are the really low level fights. When you go back to certain areas, you see the enemies start to come up blue because they're significantly lower leveled. And you can just swing and hit them and they disappear. You don't have to fight them. And you usually even get an item. No experience, but they offer almost nothing in experience anyway. So why the hell not? You don't have to waste the time fighting low level shit. You don't necessarily have to just dodge them. You can swing and make them go away and still get an item for it. So, yeah, not necessary. I've played tons of games with enemies on the map that didn't have this feature, but I really appreciate it for going through areas that are lower leveled so that I don't have to do a whole bunch of pointless fights.
Yeah, and actually, my recent playthrough of Dragon Ball Kakarot took this concept and took it a step higher. Basically, in their game, you could do almost the same thing as you're flying around the world map. If you're doing it with super speed, if you ran into something and you basically smack it so hard like a truck, if it's low enough levels, then it just dies instantly, but you get all the rewards and it's treated as an S rank fight. So you get the experience, you get any drops, you get whatever you would normally get from the fight. And if you knew what you were doing in certain situations, some of them were just low enough leveled that you would still get a good chunk of experience. So, and you could do this fast enough that you could do like 10 of these kills in under a minute. So you could actually grind a little bit using this method. And I thought it was actually really cool.
Yeah, it's something that pops up in games. Some version of it pops up in games from time to time, but it's not terribly common. And maybe that's natural given that in a lot of games you don't end up going back to lower level areas necessarily. But I do think it's useful, particularly when you've got games where you do go back, where you have a story reason to go back to a certain area, for instance. It just expedites the process and just makes the whole experience so much smoother. And it also feels really natural not to have to go through this big battle thing for every dinky little fight that you have to do. Like, I'm sorry, but if I'm at level 30 and the enemy's at level 5, why can't I just one-hit kill it on the map?
Don't make me go to another screen just to, like, one-shot it. It's like wasting precious seconds.
Yeah, don't punish me for playing your game.
Well, exactly. And one of the reasons why it's such a nice feature, particularly in Iris 3, is that when you go into the Altar Worlds, which are these exploration areas in Iris 3, they only allow you to stay there for a certain amount of time. Now, there are things that can manipulate that time. There's things you can get that will give you more time. But it's really useful not to be having to waste time on unnecessary fights when you're on a clock. So, yeah, this is why I like this feature, because it's useful.
Oh, absolutely. And game developers, this is a good note for you guys too. If you use this feature, you save people time. And what are gamers needing that time for? To get through your game, to play the next one in your series or the next one you develop. So, yeah, give us more time to play more of your games, and all will be well. All right, Irene, what kind of mechanic have you got for us?
I was not really sure about this question. I thought and thought about it, but what I kept coming back to was um, features that allow us to change the turn order. So it actually, like, and also allows the enemies to change the turn order. Because I found that, like, it's very easy for your basic turn-based RPG to get stale if you can't, manipulate that somehow to your advantage. So I really enjoyed stuff like, the one more system from Persona, and like the press system from Digital Devil Saga, and things like that,
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that's also a big thing in Iris 3 and Menachemia too.
Yeah.
Where they have like the little cards where you can see the turn order, and the various skills can fuck with the turn order.
Mm-hmm.
I find it makes a turn-based fight all the more dynamic.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good feature, and yeah, a lot of really good games have included that. The traditional RPG thing is your speed stat would determine your turn order in a lot of cases, or there would be one specific stat that would do that. And I mean, that's still probably the case in a lot of these games, but having interesting ways to manipulate that is a lot of fun. And I like the systems in like Iris 3 and Manichemia, where it's not just that you're manipulating them, it's where you're adding things to the mix, where you have like recurring skills that'll keep happening, like Edge's dual stars or whatever they are.
Yeah, his basically they're giant shuriken that he shoots out of his mech sword. What it looks like is he shoots them off, and then they just go round and round a couple of times, hitting the enemies multiple times, but at different places in the turn order. I was abusing the hell out of that skill the other day.
Oh, what that's the reason a skill is in there. It's to find a way to be abused.
Yes, exactly. Apparently, I have all the opinions on this. Sorry, Irene.
No, it's all right. I'm actually okay with you taking the lead on this one.
Okay. For example, there's also in Suikoden, there's a rune called, oh god, the Gale rune, where you equip it to someone, and what it does, it ensures every other character in the party takes their turn after that character. So if you put it on someone high speed, then suddenly even the slowest characters are still often going before the enemy because their place in the turn order is influenced by that party member, that person with high speed. So there's lots of interesting ways to mess with turn order, but we've mentioned some of the best ones already.
Yeah, no, we definitely have, and yeah, these were all some great ones for turn-based RPGs. But let's switch gears and look at some of the action RPG elements that are unnecessarily useful. So Mel, what do you have for us?
I really love when you can select a limb or a segment of a boss to target, and that actually matters. So you can restrict their movements. You can decide, I want to not have to deal with this character's, rocket launcher or whatever. And you can make the battles more dynamic, which is really interesting, especially when you're fighting kind of an endless train of the same monster over and over.
Yeah, that's definitely useful.
Yeah, and I mean, some games have definitely built this up as like kind of a really, really important part of the game. Like VATS in Fallout, right, is like kind of core to how you play that game. And for the most part, I think that it's not great. Legs are good because you modify the character's movement and you can kind of move around the environment a bit more. But especially like when you're fighting monsters like creatures, I find that it can be really, really interesting. Horizon Zero Dawn does this really well, where you can target different elements of a creature. So you could highlight the source, the fuel source, and in doing so, blow up the creature and hurt nearby enemies. So I think it can be done really well, and it can sort of be done lazily. But if it's done and it really matters, I think it's really cool.
No, I agree. And honestly, with Horizon, there's nothing more fun than stripping a giant robot dinosaur of its like laser cannon or its buzzsaw throwers and then picking them up and using them on it.
The game is about shooting robot dinosaurs until their guns fall off and then picking up the robot dinosaurs' guns and then using the guns to shoot the robot dinosaurs.
Sometimes it's like the only way you
loads.
can win. It's so good, right? And it feels
Yeah.
so dynamic and interesting, and it really rewards you taking the time to observe them. Like, with the animals in Horizon Zero Dawn, you have to kind of watch how they move, how do they fight, what if you shoot one of these creatures, how do the others react? And it starts to become this really kind of fun, varied world that you're playing in, not just, I'm choosing to headshot because headshots are great.
Right?
Yeah, there's what's related to this sort of thing is directional targeting as well. Like it's not always necessarily like specific limbs, but does attacking from certain directions make a difference? For example, your skills may give you a bonus on back attacks, like a big damage bonus. Or, like it's often used in boss fights to be able to give you a way to kill a boss that's otherwise ridiculously overpowered. It's not just, things that shield the boss, but also things that like throw big ass magic spells at you.
And this is like a thing in tabletop games too, right? Sometimes when you make bosses, the bosses have so much HP that's like, how do you make that fight interesting and not just a slog? And I think you can do that by making limb or segment targeting. You can do that by having them do effects. But how do you make it, interesting and dynamic without it just being tedious to just be like, okay, and I do 15 more damage over and over and over for the next 40 minutes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's no fun. Not in video games, not in tabletop either, so.
No, and often it doesn't work very well.
No, it doesn't.
All right, let's move on to our next mechanic, which will be mine. I have selected a tiny feature, but so much more useful than I ever thought was possible, and that is a low health alert screen. Older games, the one thing you would see on the screen is that your health meter would turn red, or the numbers determining your hit points would change color. Is very minimal, and if you weren't paying attention, it might be too late for you to heal before, especially in an action RPG scenario. Now you've got games like Yakuza or Code Vein. When you get to a low enough health point, in Yakuza you get like a big red flashing screw like border on your screen Or with Code Vein, the whole screen would go black and white temporarily until you got enough health back to actually stay in the fight. It is just really useful. I mean, it could still mean that it's too late at that point, especially in Code Vein, where, we've got a Dark Souls style game, where so you're going to take lots of big hits regardless. But at least the warning signal is a lot heftier, and it makes sure that you don't have to pay attention to those minor things like your health bar.
It is useful. One of the versions of it that I absolutely loathe is the fucking heartbeat ones.
Oh, it's upsetting.
It is. It's kind of viscerally upsetting.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right. Sky, what have you got?
So mine's a little ridiculous and unrealistic, but I love it. So I'm going to refer to Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, and the fact that in those games there is no fall damage if you land in water.
Fall damage is dumb just in general in action RPGs, so like you're playing characters that can kick the moon out of orbit. What the fuck are they doing twisting their ankle coming down off a ledge?
Everyone's got to have a weekness.
It's called being over 30.
Well, I understand this, but I feel like I am over 30, but I feel like if I were able to, reposition a satellite by pole dancing on it, maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't take any fucking fall damage.
Man, I love this genre. I love games. You can say a sentence like that and be completely serious.
I'm very serious.
In certain circumstances, I do get it, because you can fall from... In Xenoblade Chronicles, you can fall in certain areas from insane heights. When I was playing the first one, I fell one time from so far up that it took me about 2 minutes to hit the ground and die.
There's a difference between falling so far that you're pretty much out of the level and just oh, ow, I fell just a little bit too far and hurt myself.
Yeah. And some games are ridiculous with fall damage. Xenoblade's pretty good at, if you jump down a little too far, it'll give you some fall damage, but you're okay in most circumstances. No matter what the height you fall from, if you land in water, you take 0 fall damage.
There are speedruns of these games that are built on that strategy.
I can
tell you that right now.
You can... There's so much fun things you can do with this. A few times I've simply just leapt off a waterfall for shits and giggles. There are areas where you can take a dive bomb off the equivalent of Niagara Falls.
Okay then.
Yeah. So there's a couple cool things this allows you to do, though. For example, you can take a shortcut you wouldn't be able to otherwise make. If you can jump and land in water, so you can go from a tall height area to a lower height area in an instant, so long as you make the jump into the water.
So long as you land. Stick the landing. It's important.
It is important. Not that there's much penalty for dying in these games, but...
Sometimes there is. Bayonetta gets dragged off to hell.
Yeah, no, it's there in Xenoblade in particular. I was referring to. There's virtually no penalty for dying. You just get relocated to the most recent checkpoint, basically. And there are some areas that you simply cannot access without jumping down from a higher accessible spot into water. I had one time where I was really high up. This was the first game again, in the Nopon village. So far up that I could not see ground level. And the Nopon village was literally inside of the world's biggest tree. So I couldn't see the bottom, but there was this... It looked like a plank. It looked like a diving board out one side. Look down, cannot tell for the life of me if there's water down there. Yes, yes, there was. I was
Good.
very pleased to find an area that there was no other way to access.
No, that's like very Dark Souls as well, by the way. Like most of those games like revolve around, okay, so you're gonna open up this shortcut by doing a series of like really dangerous drops that if you miss one, you're just dead. That's it.
Yeah.
And like, okay, I say like fall damage is dumb, haha, but at the same time, like these games are supposed to be hard, and I understand that. But I will stand by fall damage in Dark Souls is dumb because, like, again, you're fighting bosses that like you are the size of one of their hands, and like they're not one-shotting you into like red mist.
Yeah, realism is not exactly a concern here.
No.
No, definitely. All right, Irene, how you gonna end us off this evening?
With a mechanic that's been incorporated with many action RPGs recently that I actually really enjoy. The perfect dodge. Now, I'm sure you've all heard me discuss this before, but it's that it's that window right before you get hit with an enemy attack that if you dodge properly in it, you get an advantage and you're able to turn the tide of combat. I was first introduced to it as Witch Time in Bayonetta 2, but it's since like resurfaced in stuff like Nier Automata. Like the perfect dodge is like a staple of many action RPGs.
Yeah, it's in the Spider-Man.
Exactly. It's a defensive mechanic that's also offensive, and I really like it because it allows you to not only, escape the clutches of whatever enemy it is you're fighting, but it also allows you to really like immediately turn on the like counterattack.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's going to cover it for our discussion of mechanics that are unnecessary but great. So yeah, no, these are all some great ones. Some I hadn't thought of. Some were definitely up there in my mind, but they're great choices nonetheless. What do you guys think of these mechanics? Are they good? Do we really need them? Would you prefer having them? Let us know. Let me know on my Twitter. You can find me at Billionaires XP, or you can find me on Instagram at Rayfe. You can check out my streams Wednesdays 7 p.m. on Twitch, also at Rayfe. Sky, where can everyone find you?
I'm at SkyKnightXP on Twitter and Twitch, SkyKnight.xp on Instagram, and my streams are on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And Irene, where can everyone find you?
I'm at irogue_XP on Twitter and Twitch. I usually stream on Thursdays at 7, so come check it out.
Awesome. And Mel, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Feminist Gamer or on Twitter at Feminist Gamer 3. And I run a D&D actual play live stream every Wednesdays at 6:30. So check it out.
Awesome. Awesome. Looking forward to it. All right. And check out our website for quickfire reviews, written content, and stream schedules. That's located at xpbillionaires.wordpress.com. And check out our monthly newsletter. We should have one coming up for March in the very near future, if it's not out already. But definitely check that out, coffee.com/xpbillionaires. So that's going to be it for us this week. And remember, in order to evolve with your video games, you need to keep gaming. We'll see you next week, everyone.
Bye!
Adios.
Bye-bye.